When we talk about the dance of attraction across generations, we often imagine opposites tugging toward one another: experience and curiosity, certainty and exploration, the familiar and the unknown. But the true essence of flirting is not about age, it is about energy. It is about the way two people create a small, temporary world that belongs only to them in that moment. Flirting through presence rather than performance asks an older man to step away from the impulse to impress and instead step into the deeper art of attunement. Presence is a form of quiet magnetism. It is the ability to make another person feel that the world has slightly slowed down simply because you are paying attention. So often, people approach flirtation as a stage where they must showcase charm, wit, or youthful energy to win someone over. But the younger woman in front of you is not looking for an audition. She is responding to how you make her feel in the small, subtle spaces between words. Presence begins with awareness of your body, your breath, your energy, and the emotional tone you bring into the interaction. When you are grounded, you communicate steadiness without saying a single word. You create an atmosphere where she can relax, where the conversation can unfold naturally, and where nothing feels rushed or forced. This is far more enticing than leaning on flashy stories or exaggerated confidence because it signals that your value does not depend on external validation. Presence also shows up in the way you listen. When you listen not just to reply but to understand, you demonstrate maturity in its purest form. It is not about nodding politely, it is about being genuinely curious. Younger women are highly attuned to whether someone is engaging with them or simply waiting for their turn to speak. Real presence means holding eye contact without possession, offering warmth without pressure, and responding not to impress but to connect. It creates an environment where she feels respected rather than evaluated. When you shift from performance to presence, you stop trying to be more and instead allow yourself to be fully there. It removes the fear of comparison because you are no longer competing with younger men nor trying to disguise your age. You are embracing it as part of the richness you bring. Presence invites authenticity from both sides. It encourages her to open up at her own rhythm and gives you the space to reveal who you are without pretense. In this space, flirting becomes a gentle exchange rather than a strategic maneuver. It becomes a shared moment shaped by comfort, curiosity, and mutual attention. Presence allows the dynamic to unfold in a way that feels natural rather than orchestrated, magnetic rather than manipulative, and deeply human rather than performative. Honoring boundaries and agency is the foundation of any respectful flirtation, and it becomes even more essential when an age difference is present. A younger woman is not just engaging with your personality, she is also subconsciously evaluating whether the dynamic feels safe, balanced, and free of pressure. When an older man acknowledges this and approaches the interaction with emotional awareness, he creates an atmosphere that feels freeing rather than confining. Boundaries are not obstacles to desire, they are the very structure that allows desire to move comfortably. This begins with recognizing that her interest, her pace, and her comfort are the guiding forces of the exchange. Instead of assuming what she might want or projecting your expectations onto her, you allow her to set the tone. Doing so communicates respect far more powerfully than any compliment or gesture ever could. Agency is her ability to choose what she shares, how she responds, whether she wants the conversation to continue, and how close she wishes to let you emotionally or physically. When you honor her agency, you relieve her of the burden to manage your hopes or disappointments. It shows that you are attuned to her autonomy and not trying to steer her into a role she did not choose. This is where emotional maturity becomes visible, in the subtle ways you allow the moment to breathe, in how you listen to her cues, and in how you accept her yes as freely as her no. Respecting boundaries means being aware of not only what she says but what she does not say. Sometimes hesitation, silence, or a shift in energy is her way of communicating discomfort. Instead of pushing forward, presence invites you to slow down and create space. This is not weakness, it is sensitivity. And younger women often find this emotional intelligence far more attractive than overt flirtation because it demonstrates you are not motivated by entitlement. When you give her room to choose the direction of the connection, flirtation transforms from something you do to her into something you experience with her. It becomes mutual. It becomes collaborative. It becomes a shared exploration rather than a pursuit. This also means avoiding assumptions about what she might be attracted to or how she might interpret your interest. Instead, you remain open, observant, and responsive. Honoring her boundaries is a quiet but powerful way of saying, "You matter, your comfort matters, and this moment matters only if you want to be here." It is this respect that turns attraction into trust and turns a simple conversation into something meaningful, inviting, and emotionally safe. Emotional maturity is one of the greatest advantages an older man brings into a flirtatious interaction with a younger woman, not because it grants authority, but because it offers clarity, steadiness, and intention. While youth sometimes leans on impulse or bravado, maturity carries a quieter confidence, a confidence rooted in self-awareness rather than performance. Emotional maturity communicates that you know who you are, what you feel, and what you want, and you can express these things without overwhelming the other person. It begins with regulating your emotions instead of letting them dictate the tone of the moment. When you approach flirtation with a calm, grounded presence, she senses that there is no hidden agenda lurking beneath your attention. There is no desperation or neediness asking her to validate you. She doesn't feel burdened with the responsibility of managing your reactions. Instead, she feels the ease that comes from being with someone who is in control of themselves and respectful of the dynamic. Maturity also shows up in the way you communicate. You speak honestly, but not impulsively. You compliment with sincerity instead of exaggeration. You flirt with subtlety rather than pressure. You understand that attraction is not a guarantee but an invitation, and invitations must be given with care. You don't pretend to be younger or try to match her energy artificially. Instead, you lean into your strengths, your calmness, your depth, your lived experience. This creates a dynamic that is not competitive but complementary, where you offer what she may not often encounter among those her own age. Another aspect of emotional maturity is the ability to handle ambiguity with grace. Younger women often notice when an older man becomes frustrated, impatient, or insecure if signals are unclear. But a mature man allows things to unfold without demanding certainty. He understands that connection develops at its own rhythm, and he doesn't interpret her boundaries as rejection or her interest as ownership. This patience makes her feel safe and respected, free to express genuine interest rather than perform politeness. Emotional maturity also includes the ability to protect the integrity of the interaction. You do not use your age as leverage, nor do you diminish yourself by pretending to be something you are not. You don't chase youth, you meet it with admiration, curiosity, and stability. You show that your years have taught you not just how to flirt, but how to be present without expectation and charming without manipulation. When an older man embodies emotional maturity, he transforms flirtation into a space where a younger woman can relax, unfold, and meet him authentically. It signals that the connection is not a conquest or an escape but an exchange, one grounded in respect, attentiveness, and emotional intelligence. Celebrating connection over conquest asks an older man to shift his entire orientation toward flirtation. Instead of approaching a younger woman as someone to win, convince, or impress, he treats the interaction as a shared moment of human curiosity. This shift changes the energy entirely. Conquest is rooted in ego, the desire to achieve something, to prove capability, to secure validation. Connection, however, is rooted in presence, the desire to understand, appreciate, and experience the unique energy that emerges when two people meet. When an older man chooses connection, he communicates that he is not measuring success by whether she reciprocates attraction but by whether the interaction feels genuine, respectful, and alive. Younger women are highly sensitive to the difference between being pursued and being appreciated. Pursuit often feels like pressure, appreciation feels like expansion. When the goal is conquest, the interaction becomes transactional. Compliments feel calculated, conversation feels strategic, and interest feels conditional. She senses that she is being evaluated as a prize rather than engaged as a person. But when the goal is connection, the entire experience softens. The conversation becomes more fluid, less scripted. He listens because he wants to know her, not because he is waiting for an opportunity to charm her. He shares parts of himself not to impress but to create a bridge of understanding. In this space, both people have room to be authentic rather than performative. Focusing on connection allows an older man to engage without urgency. He does not need the moment to become something more than it is. He is not racing toward an outcome. This absence of pressure is deeply attractive because it creates emotional spaciousness. She does not feel the weight of expectation. She does not feel like she owes him interest simply because he is offering attention. Instead, she feels the freedom to respond in a way that is natural to her, which is what makes genuine chemistry possible. When connection is the focus, he also becomes more attuned to her cues, both spoken and unspoken. He notices her comfort level, her curiosity, her boundaries, and her enthusiasm. He matches her pace rather than forcing his own. This attunement demonstrates emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence fosters trust. Trust, in turn, allows flirtation to evolve with greater warmth and authenticity. By celebrating connection, he invites her into a dynamic that honors both of them. It acknowledges that attraction is not owed but emerges from mutual resonance. It turns flirtation into a dance rather than a chase, a conversation rather than a conquest, and an exploration rather than an achievement. Letting authenticity replace bravado means stepping into flirtation without the armor of pretense, exaggeration, or attempts to appear younger than you are. For many older men, there is an almost automatic impulse to perform, to present a version of themselves they believe will be more appealing to a younger woman. This might show up as trying to seem more energetic, more adventurous, or more socially fluent than feels natural. But authenticity is far more compelling than any performance. It is an energy that communicates self-acceptance, and self-acceptance is magnetic. When you are authentic, you are not trying to sell yourself, you are simply showing up as you are, grounded in your own history, your own pace, and your own strengths. A younger woman can sense immediately when someone is trying too hard. Performance creates tension in the interaction. It makes everything feel slightly forced, slightly hurried, slightly artificial. It signals insecurity rather than confidence. Authenticity, on the other hand, creates ease. It allows conversations to flow without pressure. It allows you to express interest without overdoing it. It allows her to see your real personality, not the polished version, not the edited version, but the one that feels natural and sincere. And it is this sincerity that often feels refreshing, especially in a world where so many interactions revolve around curated images and rehearsed charm. Being authentic also means embracing your age rather than attempting to mask it. Younger women are not drawn to older men because they pretend to be younger. They are drawn to the qualities that often come with age: stability, depth, perspective, and emotional steadiness. When you try to act younger, you disconnect from the very strengths that make you attractive. When you embrace who you are, you allow those strengths to emerge naturally. This creates a dynamic where she can appreciate you for your presence, not your performance. Authenticity also shows up in the way you communicate desire. Instead of using lines or overly polished compliments, you express interest with simplicity and honesty. Instead of trying to impress her with achievements or stories, you share experiences that reflect your values and character. Instead of hiding your vulnerabilities, you acknowledge them without shame. This openness creates an atmosphere where she feels comfortable being herself as well, which deepens rapport and fosters trust. Finally, authenticity reduces pressure for both people. You are not trying to uphold an image, and she is not trying to respond to it. The interaction becomes a meeting of two real individuals rather than two roles being performed. And in that space of honesty, flirtation becomes more organic, more grounded, and more meaningful. It becomes an opportunity for genuine connection rather than a quest for validation, allowing whatever chemistry exists to grow naturally and without force.